Okay, so it's the early hours here, and I'm just come across a BBC video, BBC Social Trending to be precise. It's a large organisation, and in this video there was a young person um, pontificating about what non-binary means, and I do use the word pontificating because they were suggesting that male and female, boy and girl is meaningless nowadays. Well, here's the thing. That is certainly what this particular trend, social trend, would have us believe. And this is something I really have noticed in recent years. And the problem is, if you don't have a particular viewpoint, if you don't blindly accept this, then you are a bigot and you're an intolerant person, and that's it. End of conversation. We are, in my opinion, watching something that is actually getting a little bit out of control. And I don't mean that in the sense that it particularly hurts other people, but I do feel that it's going to make future generations very confused. Um, Here's the thing: people are born with an XX chromosome or an XY chromosome, unless they are born in some sort of nuclear fallout zone and they have, genetic mutations and that sort of thing. But generally speaking, people are born with an XX chromosome or an XY chromosome. That's it. Now, if it was a case that, people insist, oh, gender and sex aren't the same thing, right? But here's the flaw with that argument. They're the ones, well, whilst they insist that gender and sex are not the same thing, they then go on to actually insist that they are the same thing. Because when they say, I demand that you see me as male, or I demand that you see me as female, they're actually talking about sex, not gender identity. And I do think it's just getting absurd. There are now upwards of 28 different terms, somewhere around that 26, 30. It's somewhere around that sort of figure for how people are now identifying themselves. Non binary, demi girl, pan fluid, gender neutral. There's a lot of others. And you couldn't make this stuff up. I honestly believe that there are people on Tumblr who go out of the way to try and create new terms because they think that they're being radical or they think that they're being original, when all they're doing really is making young people more confused. It's hard enough being young. In my opinion, this is not a point of view of compassion, pandering to this sort of stuff. I actually regard it as a modern day equivalent of poking inmates at the Bethlem Hospital with sticks. The Bethlem Hospital was an old psychiatric hospital. It's where we get the word Bedlam from. And in the 18th century, people used to literally go and poke them with sticks as a day's entertainment. I think that when the media and some politicians pander to this, they think that they're being compassionate and tolerant, but they're really just pandering to what ultimately, in many cases, probably is a mental illness. Specifically, I think it's called body dysphoria, when people have serious crisis over how they self identify. And here's the thing: when a baby is born, doctors don't assign the gender, they diagnose the gender. They make a statement on what the gender is based on what they see, based on what it is. That's not being assigned. They use that term as if it's some sort of agenda that doctors have to give you a hard life. Here's the thing: if someone identifies himself in a certain way, I'll respect that because it's them. Okay, I'm not going to go up and say to their face, "Oh, you're not that," or "I will not call you that," just to be provocative for the sake of it. I'm not going to do that. But by the same token, they cannot force me to believe in something that is, in my view, basically pandering to politically correct logic as opposed to hard scientific fact. If someone's born with a penis, they are male. If someone's born with a vagina, they are female. And you can mutilate your genitals all you want, it doesn't change that. And I appreciate that's a controversial point of view because we're now starting to. The problem is we're starting to align this with other social cause celebrated throughout history, and I think that's a mistake. So the transgender movement is aligning this with the civil rights movement, indeed with the gay rights movement. There's some big differences. Homosexuality is a scientific fact, and it has existed for millennia. That's not an abnormality. It's not about mental health problems. There's many homosexual people go on and are very successful, do a lot with their life. Alan Turing, Oscar Wilde, two examples. So I don't accept that it's in that same sort of category at all. Um, Likewise, comparisons with the civil rights movement are utterly absurd. Black people in the 50s were, told to go to the back of the bus and told to go to the coloured section of bathrooms and so on. And by the way, white people who didn't abide by that were also targeted. But the point is, that was about skin pigmentation. It was a basic bigotry. It was scientific. It was bigotry based on what were facts. Black people are black, white people are white. Now, this new social trend, in my opinion, is getting a little bit out of hand because it's basically anything goes. We're now in a situation where someone can literally identify themselves as a demi-fluid pan girl, gender neutral, non-binary ladyboy. And society has to accept that because if they don't, they're horrible bigots. And I guarantee you, more terms are going to be added. If we look at the LGBT movement, it's now the LGBTQ plus movement, and that's going to increase, I guarantee you. And people who don't use that term are going to be seen as conservative and backward. It really is, in my view, getting a little bit out of hand. Um, I really don't care what people do with their own bodies, but what you cannot do is pontificate and preach to other people what they should believe. If you really want to identify yourself in a certain way, fine, but you have to accept that the majority of people just aren't going to see it that way. That doesn't mean that people should be nasty and bullying. Of course not. I abhor bullying and I always, always will. But I also get very frustrated when politically correct notions are given higher precedence than scientific fact. It is just nonsense. And that's what this is, political correctness. Because it has become kind of popular for the powers that be, like the BBC, to pander to this because it fits into their little agenda of showing how tolerant they are. But actually, it's not tolerant; it's dishonest. And no one will convince me that if someone is born with a penis, they will ever be a woman. And I know I might be going slightly off track with that, but the truth is nowadays a lot of these terms are thrown about within the same sort of movement. So transgenderism and people who identify as non-binary and all the rest of it. And it's crazy. It really is. And no doubt I'm going to have transgender people, and I suppose that's an offensive term now. Trans women and trans men will come onto this video and say that I'm ignorant and I don't know what I'm talking about. Well, what I would say to I would say this to them respectfully. I don't hate you. I don't have anything against you. But I do have a problem with spreading around things that simply are not true. In your mind, it might be true, but you know full well that if you were born with a penis, you were born with a penis. Now, people have sovereignty over their own body, so if you want to have a gender, um, if you want to have a hormone treatment and self identify as a woman, that's your right. But you cannot tell other people they have to believe that. You can insist that people treat you respectfully, that's fine, because, you know, everyone should be treated respectfully. But to insist that people believe it, no, I'm sorry, but you can't do that. And, I'm making this video now in 2016. I don't even know that if I was making this video in 2020, what I would be doing would be illegal. Because by that time, this will be considered a hate crime. It's getting utterly absurd. And I do find it rather insufferable that there are people out there who would want to make this a hate crime, simply talking about the subject. I'm not making a video and say, "Oh, look at these freaks, let's bully them or something." No, I'm simply saying that there are issues that need to be explored much more before people just lazily throw these terms around. Serious issues like gender dysphoria. I believe that is being totally sidelined to political correctness, and that's really unfortunate because actually it isn't going to help these people. It's going to make them more depressed. And by the way, if we're talking about sensitivities, when the term cisgender is used, it is almost certainly, almost universally used in a derogatory way. Oh, these are cisgender fascists who don't understand us. I'm not cisgender. I'm heterosexual. Okay? So I resent the term cisgender. You must respect my identity. If I do sound irritated, it's because I am. It's not because I hate these people. They haven't harmed me on a personal level. But what irritates me is the dishonesty. You know, that's what it is. In the end of the day, it is just basic dishonesty. And it is sensitivities being put on a higher pendulum, higher level than basic facts. XX chromosome, XY chromosome, that's it. And that's all. And if people want to dress up as transvestites, that's a different matter. I have no problem with that because they're doing it for fun. They're doing it for okay. I don't particularly understand that, but at least they don't delude themselves that they actually are a gender that they weren't born with, um, a sex that they weren't born with. But this is the thing: you're saying that gender and sex are not the same thing, but actually, you're extending that to say that sex is irrelevant. But it is relevant. If you're born male, you're born male in the end of the day. And gender reassignment surgery can only do so much. I do not look at Caitlyn Jenner and think they're a woman. No. I think that is a man who at some point in his life was very confused and very uncomfortable and they decided to have a sex change. That's how I view Caitlyn Jenner. I will never ever see Caitlyn Jenner as a woman. I'm sorry, but I just won't. And I'm just using them as a well-known example. So if I meet a transgender person, I'll respect them. I will probably use a preferred pronoun simply because I couldn't be bothered with this sort of argument. Um, but I'm not going to be thinking, okay, well, as for, by the way, straight men, there are some who actually say that if a straight man isn't attracted to a trans woman, they're a bigot. This is beyond crap. I will never, ever be attracted to a trans woman. Let's say she has a fantastic physique. I'm using the pronoun she, simplicity. Let's say she has wonderful breasts, a great body, sort of figure that red blooded males will go for. Wonderful. Now, if I find out that person is a trans woman, I don't care how wonderful they look. To me, that's deception. Simple as that. Deception. It's kind of like being given drugs to see something that isn't really there. That's how I would view it. So the answer to that is no, I will never, ever want to get off with a trans woman. I simply wouldn't. The idea, frankly, makes me deeply uneasy. It's no different from, and by the way, if a trans person deceives someone, and I appreciate it isn't easy for them to, find dates, but if they knowingly deceive someone, I really don't think that is any different from spiking someone, date rape. I people can laugh at that. I don't think it's any different. It's fucking around with someone's emotions. It's fucking around with their attraction. And I really don't think it is that different from a man spiking a woman's drink in order to date rape her. The only difference, I suppose, is that a heterosexual man is physically stronger. He can defend himself in that sense. But it's not funny. It's not a little thing to deceive someone in that way. I mean, to be fair, a guy would be pretty stupid if he didn't work out fairly soon that someone was a trans woman, but some of them are pretty convincing. And, I'm going to leave it there before I get called a bigot, but I have no doubt that there will be social justice warriors and trans women and so on coming onto the video saying that I'm ignorant. I don't really care about if you want to call me names, if your sensitivities are such that all you could do is call me names and say that I'm ignorant. My views are views shared by millions and millions and millions of people, and the vast majority of people do not believe this propaganda that it is that if you amputate your penis, if you mutilate your genitals, then you're automatically going to be the other gender. I suspect the vast majority of women will never accept a trans woman to be a real woman. Does that mean that they're horrible bigots? No. It means that they know what it is to be a woman, and vice versa. The vast majority of men are not going to accept a trans man as being a real man. They just won't. They might respect them, they might get on well with them, they might even be friends with them, but in their mind, if you're born female or you're born male, that's it. And what I am dead set 100% against is doing this for children. I think that amounts to child abuse. And I think that, parents who do this say, oh, they're being tolerant and loving. No, you're not. You're pandering to a childhood confusion. That's not loving. That is irresponsible. When I hear of children having trans operations, I despair. What the hell is going on here? I remember reading one story where there was a man, I believe in his late 40s, may have even been his early 50s, who genuinely thought he was a 6-year-old girl. And he went to live with his family. He dressed up like a 6-year-old girl. He abandoned his own family. If you don't believe me, look it up. Now, that is wrong on so many levels. Even, I would hope, trans people would agree that that was wrong. It's just plain nonsense. Firstly, he abandoned his family, which was cowardly and irresponsible. Secondly, I do question his intentions. Was it because this guy was having mental health problems? Or possibly was he a predator? Because there was another child in that family that adopted him. I'm telling you, that is just, I'm sorry, but that's fucked up. So that's what I'm driving at. And I do think in a matter of, in probably 4 years from now, 5 years from now, even making this sort of video is going to be a hate crime because we're getting to the point where what is perceived to be tolerant in society is now being pushed by aspects of neoliberalism to be tolerance, and that is actually becoming the intolerant because they're pushing through legislation to make even talking about these sort of things illegal. In New York City, Mayor de Blasio, unless I'm mistaken, has now pushed forward legislation saying that if you mispronounce someone, that is a hate crime. Please someone tell me this is not true. I hope I have got that wrong. I really do. I hope I've seen some, satirical website that it isn't true. Frankly though, it wouldn't surprise me because de Blasio is a neoliberal and that's the sort of nonsense that they come out with. It's not tolerance. It's pushing dishonesty. And I'm going to leave it there. Final few words. I will always condemn bullying. So, at no point in this video have I advocated that transgender people or people who identify themselves as non binary or whatever should be laughed at or mocked or anything like that. But by the same token, they cannot pontificate to people and they cannot kind of talk down to people and say, oh, I will educate you on these terms. I don't need education because I have looked into this. I have done plenty of research and you're peddling a lie. You're peddling what you want to be identified as. You're like a little child in a candy store. And okay, that might sound a bit sarcastic, but that's how it comes across. So until this is made illegal, I'm going to say this. And if I put it this way, if I ever want to run for office, this is the sort of thing that will be dug up. Someone will say, "Oh, look, Nathan here's that made this transphobic video," and I just hope I have the guts then to stand true to my word and say, "Yeah, that's what I believed then." And in all likelihood, that's what I would believe at that time. If I genuinely change my mind, which I highly doubt, then, I'll make another video and say, yeah, I was wrong. I was misinformed or whatever. I'll be man enough to do that. But until that time, if that ever happens, I stand by this. And it's just a great pity that people can't even talk about these things without being labelled a bigot or ignorant. Sure, people can be nasty, but I think that's partly a response because they're fed up of being lectured with these nonsense terms. I do not recognize any of those 28 terms. I recognize male, female, body dysphoria. I recognize the term transgender insofar as someone who changes their gender identity, but I do not recognize that as meaning that you, as a fact, change your sex. It's nonsense.